Hello, I want to welcome you back to the podcast, How to Play the Game of College. And I'm super excited about my guest today. As you know, we have kind of took a U-turn of sorts. When we first kicked off this podcast, we were interviewing college professionals, folks who actually work on a college campus. But I feel like the real experts are the college students themselves. And so today I am so excited to have our guest, Charles Winfrey III. He is a student at Morehouse, should I say the Morehouse College?
Morehouse College, yes, sir.
The Morehouse College. And I'm super excited to have him as a guest today. I'm going to kick it off, number one, by welcoming you to the podcast, Charles.
Thank you.
And if you can, just give us your background, during this time. And of course, with the book, I kind of start off the book with, why college, right? And there's so many students when we look across the nation, a lot of students are like, hey, college is not for me. So number one, if you can, give us your background and tell us, why did you select to attend college? And more importantly, why Morehouse?
So first, Dr. Boyd, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on the podcast today and share my knowledge. But for all of you, my name is Charles Winfrey. I'm a freshman, a business finance major from Nashville, Tennessee. I have to do my Morehouse intro. That's kind of what they're draining us there. But a little bit of background by myself. I come from Nolensville, Tennessee, or Nashville, around that area. I grew up in Nolensville High School my whole life. I've been there for the last 12 years. And then making that switch to Morehouse, which is obviously in Atlanta, it was a big change for me, going from Nashville, finally moving to Atlanta, somewhere a little bit farther from home. But why college for me? I just feel like it was the best option, as I have through my passions of wanting to get into the financial aspect and business aspect of the world. I knew it would only make sense if I bettered that relationship with building my network and my knowledge of just financial markets and financial just aspects as a whole. It only makes sense if I took that next step of going to Morehouse, and I believe Morehouse was the best option for myself.
Man, that is so great to hear. As you just mentioned, I guess the next question, did you look at several colleges? Like what, I know being an HBCU, did you kind of go through, like, how many colleges did you apply to, if you remember?
So I believe I applied to about 7 or 8, and most of them were HBCUs. So I applied to
Okay.
FAMU, Howard, Morehouse, and I believe those are all of the HBCUs. And then I did a couple of other schools, such as
Okay.
like Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, things of that nature. But I had come to this realization early that I knew I wanted to get away from home. Now it's
Okay.
different for some people. It's different
Yeah.
for some people want to stay close to home, but I realized, like, for my personal growth, I feel like it would be best if I kind of explored a new city in a way, instead of staying
Okay.
close to home. Like my mom went to TSU. I knew I didn't want to go there. I grew up around the campus my whole life. So it's
Right.
more of the shift of, as I'm growing in my next level of education, I want to grow my next level of my personal life.
Man, that is great to hear. And I like how you said earlier, hey, I wanted to get out the city of Nashville and kind of see some other things. So that is great. And when we think about, I know you just said, hey, you're coming up, ending your first semester, right? You have finals, I'm sure, coming up soon.
Yes, sir.
I guess looking at your first semester, right, as a new incoming, freshman, what type of challenges, if any, and I always like to also say, if it's not you, maybe some of your friends that are in your class, what kind of challenges did you face as a new student?
I would say one of my biggest challenges was really finding my tribe. So
Okay.
obviously being in high school and middle school, you kind of grow up with the same friends, and you guys kind of stick together. You kind of mesh with one another. So moving into this new environment, you really start to realize everybody didn't grow up how you grew up.
So
And
true.
and especially like especially with your roommate. Let's say you grew up from different backgrounds. It's really tough to mesh when you understand people just didn't grow up the same way that you did. And so I
Hmm.
would say really finding my tribe is really the number one problem I face, because everyone has different aspirations for their life. Some people set goals, some people are just living life day to day. And
Right.
to really find that group of people that matches your intentions and your goals for your life is probably the number one challenge I face personally. But I feel like once you conquer that challenge, which is only a matter of time, because if you
Hmm.
keep exposing yourself to those people, you are what you attract. So if
So
it's
true.
only a matter of a time that you'll start to find that tribe, and then I think your career will really start to take off. But that's my number one challenge so far, is really finding your tribe and coming to the realization that everyone is not like you are.
Man. We can really end the interview right there, Charles. I think that's just a life lesson, man. There's adults who still trying to find, that right circle that's around them, man. And I feel like, I used to always hear, actually from Bishop Walker, who's in Nashville, pastor of Mount Zion, he always said you want to get a circle that's going to add or multiply what you're doing, right? Not subtracts. And so I think, man, that's one of the foundations when we talk about, college success is finding a group of circle friends, right? That's going to push you. Because there's many days you may say, hey, I don't want to get out this bed. Why am I doing this to myself? But that group of friends will hold you accountable. And so, man, that is huge. I guess when we're talking about friends, right? And you being an out of state student, college roommates, guess what? I got a chapter in the book, Charles, and I'm sure you got the book, right?
Yes, sir. I've read it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sorry.
And so when you talk about college roommates, did you happen to know your college roommate before?
I did not. And I actually have a funny story when it comes to my college roommate.
Yeah.
So I actually moved. I had to move roommates. So I started in my first room for about, I think it might have been a month and a half or so.
Okay.
But I realized that we were just so different. And not that, like, I actively would try to work on building that relationship with them, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. So I moved my environment and I moved to another room where my roommate and I mesh a lot better. But I think just accepting the fact that maybe this is not my situation that I need to be in, that's going to better myself. Because maybe coming in late at night and it's 2 a.m. in the morning, come on the lights. I have an exam tomorrow.
Right.
I can't be up. And then if that's not the best for me, I'd have to change my environment. So that is speaking on your roommate.
So true. And I like to, I want to address that in a book, being in post-secondary, working in post-secondary now for 16 years, and especially in a residential campus. Honestly, that was one of the number two complaints, from students like, hey, I can't get along with my college roommate, or, like you just said, just having a different time of coming in or the expectations. And, I highlight in the book, maybe having that conversation up front, hey, let's get a roommate contract of sorts to say, hey, during a week, maybe we don't need company after 10 o'clock, right? Or, even if it comes to food or whatever the case may be. But I'm glad that you kind of saw that early, right? And you moved roommates, which is huge, because again, that can be like you going back to what you talked about with your circle, that can make or break your college experience, man. And so I guess going to the next question, what are some of the student services at Morehouse that you have found helpful?
So first thing I would say is obviously tutors. At Morehouse, we have like a writing center. Through obviously English is one of my weaker subjects, and I feel like through the writing center, it really helped me matriculate through my writing journey and become a better writer overall. So first, most importantly, I would say tutors. Second, I would say professors. Now, for potential students watching this, potential college students, don't be afraid to talk to your professors. They are like they are wanting to help you. They actually get paid to help you.
Right.
So just reach out to your professors and don't see them as just some standard that like they teach and that's it, because they are there to help you and really build a relationship with your professors. Because sometimes you may, for some whatever reason, may miss an assignment or need to extend it on a deadline. And if you're not participating in class and don't have a relationship with that professor, how do you expect them to give you leverage when you miss an assignment? So building that relationship with the professor will really help you in the long run. And obviously just network with your professors. You never know who they may know. You never know what they did. I mean, I have built relationships with some of my professors and it's paid off. And then another example where you can really help other than tutors and professors, I would say your students. At the end of the day, like upperclassmen have already gone through what you've gone through. You're not the only person that has struggled at this part in your journey.
Man.
So using a point of view from a student, upperclassmen, yes, they may appear a little scary, but they're students too at the end of the day. So they're just students. So talking to them and leveraging them, how they matriculated through their journey, if you can really get their experiences and what they learned and what they wouldn't do, or if they could do it again, what they would do, I think that would just put you in a better situation.
Man, I'm sure parents out here just taking notes, Charles. You're really dropping some major gems. And I like how you said, just ask for help, right? And that's, working with your professor. I'm amazed of how many students go through their college career. They don't know, barely know the professor's name,
Yeah.
right? Or there's a thing called what? Office hours.
Yes,
Use
sir.
them, right? That's the time that you can, like you said, more importantly, if you don't really need help on an assignment, I like how you said the networking piece, because guess what? You might need a letter of recommendation, or might be an intern that needs a faculty letter, or whatever the case may be. And like you said, hey, it's hard to ask someone that if you never have talked to them during your college career. And so the things that you're sharing are very, very crucial. Even a tutoring center, writing center, and then more importantly, the main purpose, as you just stated, while I'm doing this podcast and want to highlight students like yourself, it's golden for other students who are coming up and really going through this process to hear from you. I think sometimes as adults, right, or professionals, they're like, oh, they just saying something. But when they hear you, Charles, basically just drop the 3 strategies that you just dropped, man, it's a game changer. So again, thank you for sharing that. When we talk about major, that's another thing that we highlight in how to play the game of college, how to select a college major, right? It could be stressful. You
Yeah.
barely, a lot of times students like, hey, I got to my senior year. I had to go through all these applications. I had to figure out a college. And now you want me to determine what I want to do for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so I heard you mention, is it finance?
Yes, sir. Business
Okay.
finance.
How did you go about selecting that particular major?
So I really followed my passion. So ever
Okay.
since for the last couple of years, I've really been heavy into financial, stock market, things of that nature. So it only made sense if I got into finance, which would have obviously sparked some of those interests that I've already had. But one thing I would tell potential students is don't just choose a major for the money. I know a
Mm.
lot of people choose the major. Now, some people that may be perfectly fine. Now, some
Yeah.
people, but one thing I would say is you don't want your work to become work in a way. You want to
Hmm.
enjoy what you're doing. So find
Right.
passion. I would say explore as many different ways that you can. I know some people that have changed their major like 6 times. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really not too late until maybe your sophomore year, that second semester, first semester, sophomore year. So you have time. Don't really
Okay.
stress over it. But one thing I would say is follow your passion. And yeah, follow your passion is probably the number one thing I can say about choosing a major.
Okay. And I like how you said that, again, I think many students start out, and again, it's important. You want to make we want to say livable wage, right? You have to
Right.
support yourself, your
Yeah.
family. But, one of the greatest pieces of wisdom I received was from a high school teacher. And she always used to say, follow your passion and your purpose, right? Like everyone was put on earth to do something, right? And so when you tap into that, and especially early, like I see with you, Charles, things just kind of find you, right? You don't really have to like search for opportunities. People kind of see you operating your gift. So I like how you highlight, hey, I was interested in this stock market. And this is why I selected this major. But however, there's many students that do change majors. So that's not a bad thing, right? Like you
Oh,
said, 6 times,
oh,
And
yeah.
so if you kind of get into something, you're like, this is not what I thought it was. I thought this, but it's completely different. Hey, life is short. You want to get up daily and do something that you want to do and not have to do, if that makes sense. So again, I definitely appreciate you. What about internships? Have you did any, or maybe looking at some of those in your particular major?
So I actually do. So one thing that I would say for personally for my internship, I have a couple interviews lined up for internships my freshman year summer. So
Okay.
they some companies do offer internships during the winter, but I
Okay.
think it's probably best for me if I do it in the summer as I'm
Right.
still acclimating to the college process. But when it comes to internships, I know everybody wants to really make the money at the end of the day and really start their career path. I would
Hmm.
say you have to make the initial step to find those internships. The internships are going to come to you. So the
Okay.
best way that you can do that is market yourself to people on campus. Like I said, building that network with professors. You never know
Mm.
who may know who. So at the end of the day, when it comes to internships, if you take that initial step forward, I think in the long run, it will only come back in tenfold for you. But for internships, you really just have to take that initial step. And for myself, I do plan at working an internship in the summer. I
Okay.
kind of have narrowed it down to about 2 to 3 companies that I'm looking to work for. But
That's great. That is great. And again, I feel like it's just another way to kind of give you a preview of like what's in a particular major. And again, I've had students that went on internships, great internships, and they came back and said, "Hey, Dr. Boyd, it was great. I met some great people, but it did show me this is something I don't want to do for the rest of my life. So I'm going to kind of navigate to something different, for example, my sophomore year." And so I think internships or apprenticeships are so, so very important. I've heard you talk about money, Charles, right? Everyone wants to make money. Again, I think I'm trying to highlight a lot of the things that I've heard or recently heard since the book have dropped. Finances are huge, right? When we talk about college, college is not cheap, right? Can you give us some tips on maybe, I don't know if you apply for different scholarships or you use financial aid? What is your process of like, hey, helping you to pay for college?
one thing I would say is leverage scholarships or utilize them.
Okay.
There are plenty of scholarships out there, and there are a lot of people who want to help students that look like you and the student whoever's listening. There are a
Okay.
lot of people out there. There's the Marshall Fund for students coming into HBCUs. I know that's a
Okay.
big scholarship. Nike has a scholarship they do for an HBCU student.
Hmm.
I even think Coca-Cola has a scholarship they do for HBCU students. But there are just a plethora of scholarships out there, but they do require work. And at the end of the day,
Right.
the
Hmm.
essays, you have to put time into these essays and these videos, submitting these videos to these college students, and don't shortcut it.
Okay.
They're not just going to give X amount of dollars out for free. Like they're going to need
Right.
that you're a valid candidate. And so
Hmm.
I believe if you really put the time in, put the work in, like I said, put yourself out. Same thing with internships, almost compares to scholarships. If you put yourself out there and really put the work in to apply to these scholarships,
Hmm.
I believe if you put the work in, you can receive some of these scholarships.
Man, I love how you said it. A lot of times people just think, hey, the money's just going to appear in front of me.
Right. It's
That's
not.
just not life, right? So you have to put the work in. And, I had a student on last week, Charles, and he just said, start early. You don't have to wait till your senior year. I think sometimes that's the big misconception. It's like, I got to wait till the spring, 2 months
Right.
before I graduate. A lot of times the scholarships are gone. So like start maybe junior year, the summer, like really looking and researching to see
For
what's
sure.
out there. It's so, so very key.
Dr. Boyd,
Okay.
can I add one
And
more point to that?
yeah, yeah.
Scholarships.
Uh-huh.
One thing I would also say is when you mentioned on the start early, that
Yeah.
means start early in the classroom too.
Man.
As important as that is, you'll hear a lot of colleges say they're test optional now.
Okay.
Do you think it makes you more competitive if you take your ACT and have a high score versus someone who doesn't? Obviously,
So
the college
true.
will take the person who has the higher score. So
Right.
start early in the classroom. I would say specifically for those ACT and SAT tests, start to practice early. As hard as I know it does not, you do not want to study for it. It's a long test. If you
Right.
can start early, you will ease your pain your senior year and your junior year. So it's not just all cramming into one time and one little time slot where at the end of the day, like you said, most of these spots may already be taken the time you wait
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
here. And if you
So
start
true.
early and just building on, building on, building on, it's like a snowball effect and it'll all just come through in the end.
So true. I like how you said also, starting early in the classroom. I think, I have a son now that just started high school, ninth grade, and I talk to him daily like, hey, this is when it starts, ninth grade. Your grades count, and going on those college tours and researching early, which is key. So I'm glad that you highlighted that as well. If we think back to high school, right, which is not too far from you, right,
Not too
a
far.
semester ago, right? What was one thing in high school, maybe a person or a particular resource that helped you to navigate the college scene?
One thing I would say, quite frankly, was your book. Now,
Oh, wow.
I didn't really have as many connects as I wanted to at Morehouse College. I had a few,
Mm-hmm.
but really reading your book almost gave me a glimpse of
Mm.
the college experience before I even stepped foot on
Oh,
campus.
man.
So you talking about how to navigate through college when it comes to friends, through maybe predicaments you may come into with your
Mm-hmm.
roommate, how to really take advantage of the classroom. I think really reading the book, how to how to gain college, how to
How to play
work,
the game.
how
Yeah,
to
how
play
to
the
play
game, how to play the game in college.
the
Yes, sir. I apologize, but
He did the
really,
remix of the title.
yeah, really,
Yeah.
really read the book of how to play the game in college. I think it just
Yeah,
gives you a glimpse of the college experience before you even step foot on campus. But to
man.
get to your point about who really helped me in high school,
Hmm.
I believe it was my parents. Now I know maybe not everyone
Yeah.
might not have the luxury of having parents who have gone through the college
Hmm.
experience, but
Hmm.
having my parents exposed me to different college campuses, taking me
Yeah,
on tours. It really opened my range of view to know that if this is not what I want to do, I have other options. And
so
really,
true.
like I said, and to have those other options, it starts in the classroom. But through
Mm.
high school, that really helped my journey. It was your book and really my parents.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. And I did not pay him or tell him to say that, y'all. You see, I was kind of surprised, like, oh. And again, I love how you mention your parents, you know. So many times we don't give parents enough flowers, right? And so just hey, having those parents, and I talk about that in the book, parents, you know, they are probably the most important factor when we talk about students going to college, but more importantly, when they get to college, persistent to graduation. And so, again, shout out to parents. I know a lot of parents listen to this particular podcast. And so, just hearing a student to say, hey, you know, I want that student to be like, Mom and Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. It seemed like you were
Yeah.
very open, right? Into like really listening to your parents and being open to the different options that they were able to show you. So I'm glad that you were able to highlight parents in this process, which is huge. Yes. And so looking, I guess our last question, man, this went by too fast,
I
right? We
know
need
it
a
did.
part
This
two,
is
I
this
feel
is
like.
good.
Yes. And so when we're talking, if we look at the camera now and that senior who might be on the line when we talk about college, right? And they're like, hey, you know, I ran into an Amazon rep and I just ordered Amazon. Nothing wrong with Amazon, right?
Yeah.
But when we talk about a career, not just doing a job, right? What is that one piece of advice if you're talking about maybe the value of college for students and they're like, college don't matter. You know, I can just go out here and work. I'm good. What type of advice would you give that student who might be listening?
I bring it back to opportunity costs. So
Mm,
you have to ask yourself, is the 4 years of college of education, networking, experiences, the same experiences you can get, like you said, if you take that path of just working a job? That's a
mm,
question you have to ask for yourself.
yeah.
If I were to ask me, it's more worth, especially going into the field of finance, to create these networks at Morehouse College of getting the education, the networking, and just all the events that we have. Now, like I said, it's a question that boils down
Yeah.
to the individual who's asking, who's answering the question. But when it comes to a career path, you don't have to know what you want to do now. But if you have a passion,
Mm-hmm.
follow that passion. And if you have not found your passion or your purpose, explore, do different things, explore
Mm,
different routes to find where your passion is. There's
right.
if you haven't found your passion yet, that means you haven't done enough things, quite frankly.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm,
if
mm-hmm.
to find your passion, I believe, like you said, we were all here we were put on earth for a reason. And once you find that purpose, if you just continue to go along that track, I believe you can help someone in the future.
Man, Charles, I'm inspired, man, just by hearing you say that, man. And again, you just don't know how many students and parents you're going to help by them just listening to this podcast. So again, man, thank you, a
Thank you,
huge
Dr.
thank you.
Boy.
You did
Thank you.
excellent. And I want to, as y'all can tell, Charles is, I'm like, man, you could be on, you know, a network, man. You're just natural, right?
Yeah.
But Charles has a new podcast. I'm going to give you a second, Charles, to just kind of put up that podcast if you got folks who want to tune in, man, and learn more. Can you give us a little background about that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. So, here at Morehouse College, I'm a freshman, and I actually got presented with the opportunity by a professor at Morehouse College of Finance, Professor James Young, to start a
Okay.
podcast that's sponsored by the Morehouse Business Association. So the podcast is called MBA Unplugged. So what we talk about is financial literacy. We're educating you all on financial investments, alternative investments, career paths, and really just different scenarios. If you get put in this scenario, what would you do with your money or financial aspects? So we bring on guests. We've had on multiple guests. Like we have a wide range of pastors,
Oh,
nonprofits,
good. Okay.
investment bankers, and we're just really looking to expand our repertoire of guests to really give you guys just a broad range of business. And like we said, we're exposing you to different routes of business, and then you can really decide which funnel you want to go into. So if you guys would love to check out the podcast, we're on YouTube under the Morehouse Business Association. We
Okay.
post we post 3 episodes a week, and we'd
Man.
love to check you out.
Sounds good. And Charles, what we'll do under this podcast, I'll make sure to put that link. So if you're
Right.
looking, viewers, we'll have the link that will be located in the description. So that way you can easily find Charles in that particular podcast. But again, man, super excited that you were on today. And again, I just want to thank the guests, the students, the parents, please make sure you like, share, comment. And Charles will probably check those comments out, right, Charles?
Yes, sir.
And
If any
reply back.
students, if any students, can I
Yes.
give out my email? If any students would like to
Yeah, yeah.
contact me
And
or
what
any
we can
questions.
also do, Charles, what I do, I collect that and we'll just put that under the description as
Okay,
well. So
perfect.
if you have a LinkedIn, your email, of course, the podcast, we definitely want you to follow Charles and the other students that I'm interviewing over the next few weeks. And so, again, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next week on how to play the game of college. Thank you.
Guys.